Secretary of State Antony Blinken is in Saudi Arabia holding a third day of talks across the Middle East aimed at preventing the war from expanding. Earlier, he met with the foreign defense minister, and later he'll sit down with United Arab Emirates president. This as more questions are being raised about how Hamas managed to pull off such an unprecedented attack right under Israel's nose. U.S. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin attempting to address that lapse in intelligence yesterday.
If we had known, or if we know of a pending attack against an ally, we would clearly inform that ally.
Joining me now is NBC News correspondent Dan Deleuze. So, Dan, what more can you tell us first about Secretary of State Blinken's trip to Saudi Arabia and what he's hoping to accomplish?
Blinken's trip is really an attempt to make sure that Arab partners and the U.S. are on the same page, trying to make sure that the conflict, already in a terrible state of affairs, doesn't spread, doesn't become a wider war in the region. I think he's also discussing how to protect or help civilians caught up in this in Gaza, how to get maybe humanitarian aid into Gaza or to get Palestinians out of Gaza, civilians out of Gaza. Those are all very difficult subjects, but he's now traveling throughout the Middle East, to Jordan, to Qatar. He's on his way to the Emirates after speaking to the Saudis. And again, he also wants to save the agreement that was being negotiated between Israel and Saudi Arabia before the Hamas attack, which was to normalize relations between Israel and Saudi Arabia, which would be a historic step. And I think he's probably trying to preserve that negotiation and ensure that that doesn't unravel.
Dan, we heard from Secretary Austin saying if there was credible intelligence about something like this, we would pass it on to our allies. What more do we know about the lapse in intelligence? And what do you make of Austin's comments? I mean, should we take that as an admission that the U.S. also missed this?
I think it is. It's an acknowledgement. And other U.S. officials have not pretended that the U.S. had a clear idea of what was going to happen. This was an intelligence failure, a massive one for Israel primarily. This is their backyard, and they pride themselves on having an excellent intelligence service. And there has been tremendous criticism inside Israel, a lot of commentary in the newspapers there, asking how is it possible the government missed this. I think there is not one clear explanation yet, but clearly Hamas was able to disable the cameras and motion sensors that are on that southern border. They were also able to just swarm that border area through sheer numbers, that they saw that there was sort of a weakness, that Israel was relying heavily on fences and technology, perhaps too much so, and had a false sense of security. But there will also be some soul searching here in Washington as to why there wasn't a bit more of a heads up that something like this was coming. They knew vaguely Hamas was girding for something at some point, but there was nothing specific. And a lot of eyes were focused on the north, where Hezbollah is, in Lebanon or in the West Bank.